Hello, everyone. Welcome to the next Hewlett Packard Labs podcast from Research to Reality. Today, we will be talking about human resources, or HR. I have a great honor and pleasure to host Stefani Ewell. Hello, Stefani.
My name is Stefani Ewell, and I am the HR business partner supporting the Hewlett Packard Labs.
Can you please introduce yourself and the role that you play as human resources?
Yeah. So, again, my name is Stefani Ewell, and I am one of the two HR business partners supporting our Hewlett Packard Labs team. I also support our AI solutions and our AI cloud team in HPC.
And you are the first human resources person we ever interviewed. We had about 60 podcasts so far. So can you, for the people, I'm sure most everyone knows what human resources are, but just in case someone doesn't, could you at the high level describe what are the roles and responsibilities?
Yeah, so HR is actually really broad. So within HR, we have three branches. We have the business partners, which is where I sit. And then we also have people operations and our centers of excellence, which we call COEs.
And what do you specifically do within HR?
So I am an HR business partner. And what that means is that I am a thought partner for our executives. I'm typically supporting, anywhere from like an L2 to an L4. So what that means is if you think of like our CEO as a level 0, and then like our SVPs are a level 1, then I'm supporting that next click down at the L2 through L4. So I support, you and Colin and all your peers.
And do you notice any difference as you go up and down these levels?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So when I am supporting, typically like our L4s, which is kind of like that lower level that I'll support, I'm typically helping with more like day-to-day asks. So like when I'm working with you, I'm really helping with like our hiring and our intern onboarding, offers, promotions, kind of more of those sorts of tasks. When I'm supporting someone like Andrew, it's a little bit at a higher level. We're really thinking of our strategy in terms of support for the team. So like I will help synthesize and come up with actions from our engagement survey. Mm-hmm. Or, as part of the move from the HPC team to the hybrid cloud Octo space, I'm helping look at what's the org structure, who moves where, and how that looks.
And Octo is Office for CTO. Not everyone knows what Octo is.
Yes.
And do you have any message for our employees, younger and more experienced, and anywhere in between?
From an HR perspective, yeah. So I think a lot of times when we think of HR, we think of like what we see on TV or we think of like that scary person who like just comes for employee relations complaints. And HR is so much more. I mean, we're really trying to help improve the engagement and the overall employee experience. We really want to help develop our team members into wherever they want to go with their career. So that's really the bulk of what HR does. The facet of like, I guess like looking into those sorts of cases, that's just a tiny part of what we do.
And you and I chatted a little bit before this podcast recording that HR in many ways reminds me of IT. If everything works well, that's a great sign, but we know IT only when something breaks.
Yep. And
in some ways, it's similar true for HR. So how do you break down these breaks in terms of severity, and how can we portray to our whole employee base that you are there for them to help, not just when things break, but throughout the career?
Yeah, so exactly. I mean, we're there when things break and we're there to help, but really we are in the business of being more proactive. And so we are creating programs to fix these breaks before they even break. So like, I think one really great example is our performance enablement program that we introduced this year. And previously we were holding quarterly My Success Plan conversations with leaders and team members, and it was kind of an informal time, and we just said, hey, at some point in this quarter, have this conversation and talk to your employees about how they're doing and where they want to go with their career. And I mean, people were doing it, and I think Labs is pretty good, but not everyone was doing it, and sometimes these conversations weren't as fulfilling. And so this year, we've enabled a more structured performance enablement program. And in it, there's a snapshot that managers, they have to do their homework basically before they even have this conversation. So they go through and they rate how are their team members doing on their goals and how are they doing in terms of, portraying HPE beliefs and behaviors. And then, there is structured time to have these meetings, and managers are expected to schedule these meetings within that time. And it's really a structured and good opportunity to give employees a very clear perspective of how are they doing against their goals, how are they doing in general in terms of performance, and an opportunity to talk about where do you want to go next, what does that look like, and what can I do as your manager to help you get there.
These are great examples, but coming back at you, so how do you measure your own success in running HR?
Yeah, so I think one kind of softer measure, and the majority of it comes from feedback. So a lot of times when my manager wants to know how I'm doing, she'll go to my clients, so like you or Cullen or any of the other executives that I support, and she'll ask for feedback on how is Stephanie doing, how she's supporting you, how she's supporting your teams. So that's, I think, the most common way to get feedback and measure success in my role. And then another way, we also have more concrete ways. So if we're looking at, engagement survey scores year over year, we want to see that there's improvement and that I've been involved in developing and supporting programs to help overall improve our employee engagement scores.
How do you see the future of HR? Will it be easier for you, for us, harder? How it will be more effective, more efficient?
I think it'll be easier and harder. Definitely more efficient. I think right now we're doing a pretty good job of removing some of those easier administrative tasks. We have bots that support some of these approvals already in Workday. But as we continue to see HR evolve, we'll continue to see more and more of those tasks go to AI or computers, and in a sense, it'll be harder, but we get to spend more of our time with thought partnership. We get to bring that human perspective to our role even more. So I get to spend even more time talking to you and strategizing on how we can improve.
Rather than doing some make work.
Exactly. Like instead of approving something in work.
Yeah, that's a great example. So how do you innovate? I understand applying bots, these My Success plans, etc. But how do you approach it? You sit down, you brainstorm. I know how we do research, but how do you innovate in HR?
So I like to come from it from a really organic perspective. And so a lot of times, I sit back and I observe, and I'm going through my day-to-day tasks, and, maybe there's a recurring problem or something that just is an issue and it really shouldn't be. And that's kind of how I decide what project I want to take on next. So an example of that, when I first started supporting labs, our university hiring, remember how painful that was?
Yep.
It was so painful. And it was just because, HR support kept churning and changing, and, we kept getting new recruiters and new team members on our university recruiting. And labs is so complex with their needs. And it's really different from the majority of the company. And so getting people to understand and learn that every year was just, not the best time spent. So what I did was we went through that first year process, and then at the end I went and I collected feedback from you and one of the other leaders, and
gentle feedback.
Yeah, it was good feedback. It was honest though. It really reflected on the frustrations, and we were really pushing for better. And so then from there I went to our university recruiting partners and our talent acquisition partners and our recruiters, and I said, hey, here's the feedback, here's what I'm taking from it, and here's what I think the solution is. But really, some of these changes sit with your team. What do you guys think? How do you think we can change it? Where's the learnings? What's the change? And we went through feedback item by item and wrote down what do we think is the proper next step. And then from there, I took on the task of writing an actual guidebook. So I have I think it's a 20-page guide on Word with step-by-step instructions and explaining all the different types of hiring we do in labs and what are the needs of it and why is it this way. And then, there's screenshots of different steps. So that's an example of me innovating. And
I wish we had you earlier.
But it was better this year.
Yeah, it was tremendously better.
So yeah.
And another question is, was this your biggest challenge, or were there any other largest challenges than this one in terms of hiring in your career. You've been 5 years with HR.
Yeah, I've been in HR 5 years. I've been in this role 2 years. I don't know if this is the hardest ever challenge that I've faced. I think everything has a certain complexity to it. What's unique in my role is that there's partners in everything. And typically I'm playing this role of like informed middleman. So I'm typically in the middle of the process, and I hear the feedback from one side, and I think I know what the solution is, but I'm never, well, not never, but typically I'm not the person who can like enact that change per se. So the common challenge is finding, resonating something in the middle, and then proposing the solution, finding out what we can do, and then bringing it back to the team and saying, here's what we can do, here's what we can't, and here's what, we're going to do to work around what we can't change.
Yeah, middle people are extremely important. And what do you consider your biggest success? What are you most proud of? Is it your guidebook or something else?
Yeah, I actually am really proud of my guidebook. I think I'm really proud of just overall my partnerships. I think I've created really, really strong relationships with all the leaders I support. I think I really kind of earned this seat at the table per se. Like the advisors or the people that I support with and advise, they trust my advice. They come to me and ask for support. And so that's something that's really cool and that I'm really proud of.
Well, as they say, it's hard to gain trust. It's easy to lose it. So the fact that you have seat at the table is extremely rewarding. So I would be proud of that too. You have demonstrated that you are documenting these best practices. Are there other examples of similar kind standards, best practices in HR? I mean, you are a shining example, but are there other examples of these things?
I think that's probably where we're at in a lot of things. Is a lot of processes that we have we're documenting, but what I'm learning too is that we have so many processes that are documented, but no one knows where to find them per se, or that they even exist. Like I just came across an example of that today. So that's, one piece is documenting, but the second part is educating and teaching teams where to find it. And, as HR, we take that feedback too, and we try and make it as easy as possible to find some of these resources.
Like doing this podcast, for example. That's another
Exactly, yeah.
Now, variation of the previous question of what you're most proud of is, what do you find most gratifying?
I think what I find most gratifying is how much collaboration I have in my job. I'm working with leaders. Sometimes I'm working with team members. I'm working with our global mobility team. I'm working with our compensation team. I work with people from everywhere. And it's really cool to get, expertise from different teams. I'm always learning. And it's cool. And on a personal, side too, I get to learn from these people. I get to learn about their cultures and their differences. I mean, I even partner with HR from other countries. And so it's really cool and gratifying to learn from all these different people that I get to meet with.
Now, none of us are perfect. Some are close to perfect. So if you would start today, what would you do differently?
I think sometimes in my role, I'm afraid to ask questions that I think I should know. And you never know more than what you're asking. And so if I could start over, I think I would be more bold in the questions I asked. I wouldn't be so afraid to ask questions that I should know, because as time progresses, it's even more set in stone that I should know these answers by now. So I would ask more questions about the business. I mean, part of my role as an advisor is knowing more about the business and the impact. So I think that's something that I still challenge myself to do. But in the beginning, I probably would have been more bold about the questions I asked.
I'll remind you every time to ask me questions. Needless to say, HR is exceptionally helpful to company. But let's broaden the scope. How is HR contributing to the broader good? We take pride as Hewlett Packard Enterprise that we contribute in many ways for the broader good through technologies, donations, many ways. How does HR contribute to this?
I mean, I think we really definitely enable being a force for good. From a broader perspective, I think one example that we can share is we have a program where we offer employees time off to volunteer and give back to the community. And so you literally can get paid, I think it's 3 days a year to go out and volunteer. And another program related to volunteering that HP does that's really cool is donation matching. So what I've done in the past is when I do go volunteer, and if maybe it's on the weekends, I'm not taking time off, they will match my contribution per hour in dollars. And if I donate to an organization, they will also match.
I also love those Wellness Fridays, although I hide them from my wife.
They're coming. We have one next week.
Yeah,
so that'll be really nice. Yeah.
Do you have any message for our early career individual contributors or other members of our teams?
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm still early in my career, but I would say, no matter what opportunity presents itself to you, say yes. You're always going to learn something. You're either going to learn that you hate it or you love it, or, maybe it's not for you or you want to dive deeper into it. But, I think when you are early in career, you should be like a sponge. You should try and take on every opportunity because you're going to learn something from it.
We end this podcast on a personal touch. So did you read any book lately that you would recommend to our audience?
I don't read as much as I should. I don't have any recent book recommendations, but I do really enjoy movies and TV shows.
Like Yes Man, presumably.
I did watch.
Referring back to your Always Say Yes.
Yeah, that is a good reference. But it's probably not the best recommendation because everyone's probably seen it. But we just started Game of Thrones.
Oh, okay.
And we are hooked. I think I'm watching like 2 or 3 episodes a night. It's kind of bad, but it's very enjoyable.
Beside watching Games of Thrones, what else do you do in your spare time?
I love being outside. I am probably and we're in California, so we're very gifted with the weather. But I'm spending almost all of my time outdoors. I spend a lot of time disc golfing. That's typically what I'm doing on my weekends. If I'm not disc golfing, I'm probably spending time with my dog. I have a coonhound, and we just got her trained to be off leash, so we're enjoying hiking with her. Next week, I'm camping. I'll be in Yosemite camping, and so I like the outdoors. I used to be a competitive swimmer, so I also really like the water. I'm not in the water as much anymore, but
it's a bit cold water here in Northern California.
A little, yeah. And once you're out of school age, it's really hard to get into swimming. Like you have to go out at like 5 a.m.
Yeah,
it's just not as fun.
Yeah, and so the last question. It's my understanding you grew up here in Bay Area. Do you notice any difference between the times when you were growing up and nowadays?
Yeah, I mean, there's obviously a lot more development. I think I lived in Campbell, and there used to be a lot more orchards around. And I think the most recent orchard on Los Gatos Boulevard just got torn down and is now housing. Mm-hmm. So there's more of that, which is a little bit of a bummer, but we have to change with the times. But I think diversity's also improved too. Like I don't know if I noticed it as much when I was younger as I do now. We're really like a melting pot of cultures here. You can go to the corner of any street and there's probably like 8 different types of food there. You can go find dim sum, you can find Thai food, Japanese, Afghan, American, like it's all, at your fingertips. So that's
and vegetarian.
Vegetarian's very easy to find now. Vegetarian, vegan, all those different dietary needs. It's easy to find in the Bay.
Thank you very much, Stefani. Really appreciate it. We learned a lot about HR and what and how we should work with HR.
Yeah, this is a pleasure. Thanks.